Welcome to the Homestead Farm here at Chippewa Nature Center. Today you have an opportunity to see what a farm in Midland County might have looked like in the 1870s and to learn a little bit about what life was like here 140 years ago. A farm family, like the Sinclair family that owned this land in the 1870s, would have been pretty self-sufficient. They could build their own buildings, grow their own food, make their own clothes, and meet most of their own needs right here on the farm. Farm families were an important part of Midland County, often providing food and other resources to the families living in the city of Midland. Take a look around. How many structures do you see here on the farm? What do you think these structures are used for? A farm family living in Midland County would have built many structures on their farm to provide shelter for their animals, their family, their food, and even their tools. Here at the Homestead Farm, you can find a sheep shed, pig pen, cattle shed, timber frame barn with a tool room, corn crib, root cellar, wagon barn, and log cabin. What are all of these structures made of? The trees used to make the wood timbers and planks for these structures could have come from the farmer's own land, or they could have purchased the wood from the mill in Midland. As you look around inside the cabin, can you tell how many things are made of wood? Some of these things, like the stools and table, could have been made here on the farm by the farmer and his family. Some of the things, like the bed frame and clock, would have been purchased from a store in town. How many rooms do you notice in this house? There are only 3. The main room serves many purposes and is the parents' bedroom, the sewing room, the playroom, and the reading room. Upstairs is the children's room. Through the doorway is the kitchen and dining room. A farm family may not have had a lot of rooms inside their house, but they had many outdoor places to work and play. Let's look at some of the things you can find here in the cabin. Can you find what the farm family would have used for light at night? It's an oil lamp. There was no electricity during that time, so they used candles and oil lamps to light up their home at night. How would the family have heated their home? Yes, that's a wood-burning stove there in the middle of the main room. By keeping a fire going inside, they could keep the whole house warm and cozy in the winter. How did the family get water for cooking, cleaning, and bathing? There doesn't seem to be a faucet in the kitchen or the main room. Do you remember seeing a water pump when we were looking around outside? They would have pumped the water from a well outdoors and carried it inside in buckets. Did you notice the clothing hanging on the hook by the bed? Clothing for farm families had to be easy to move around in and practical. Men wore pants, shirts, and sometimes a vest and hat. Women wore a dress and sometimes wore a hat when working outdoors. Many farm families sewed their own clothes, while others may have bought their clothes from a store in town. If the family raised sheep like the Sinclair family did, they could make their own yarn and use it to knit wool socks, mittens, and sweaters. They might even have sold their wool or yarn to families in town. Let's head outside and take a look around. Right now it's early spring and the garden hasn't started growing yet. Farmers spent a lot of time making sure they would have enough food for their families all year round. They would fill a garden like this with beans, squash, tomatoes, carrots, potatoes, cucumbers, melons, and all sorts of wonderful vegetables. They would have planted fields with corn, oats, and wheat. They also would have raised animals for food. Chickens would have provided eggs and meat. Cattle provided milk and meat. Sheep and pigs could both provide meat as well. Some farm families grew additional crops or gathered extra eggs, milk, or meat to sell to families living in town that couldn't raise their own food. In Michigan, we can only grow crops in the summer, so we have to store food for the winter. Let's step back into the kitchen. Do you see a place to store food? Yes, there are glass jars, some herbs hanging up, and some cupboards that could hold some food. There's not enough room here, though, to hold several months' worth of food. Let's visit one of the shelters we mentioned earlier. This underground room is called the root cellar. It stays about 50 degrees Fahrenheit in here no matter how warm or cold it is outdoors. In this cellar, a family could store root vegetables like carrots, potatoes, and beets for many months. They could also store fruits and vegetables that have been preserved in jars like green beans, corn, applesauce, and strawberry jelly. Even meat could be kept in the root cellar for a while. Each fall, the family would fill the root cellar with the food they would need until the weather got warm and they could grow more. Even though farm families worked very hard, they still had time for fun. They might play with toys like a Jacob's Ladder or Rag Doll. They might have enjoyed looking through a stereoscope that let them see 3D pictures or making music together. And of course, there were always trees to climb and outdoor games to play. Living on a farm 140 years ago was not easy, but families were pretty self-sufficient and could meet most of their needs right on their farm. Families had to work together to take care of the animals, grow their food in the garden and fields, build shelters for the animals and themselves, and even make some of their own clothes. Farm families were an important part of Midland County, providing for themselves and for many of the families living in the city of Midland.